The BREWtally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. BREWtally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BREWtally and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Jake from August Burns Red. This was actually a really fun chat, and, the band was in Leeds at the time. Jake was actually outside the venue, walking around on a nice morning out that way, and it was good catching up with him. I've been wanting to have Jake on the podcast for a while, and, like with a lot of guests that I wanted on earlier in the show's career, I don't think I was ready to have a conversation with him. And it's kind of funny because I was kind of like, man, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I know, the Heart Support Festival is sort of the big thing that he's pushing and why we're going to be doing the chat. But, how do you talk about putting on a festival without it kind of being boring? Well, have no fear. I watched Clerks 3 about an hour and a half before this chat because I had some time to kill. And holy shit, did it kind of ruin my day. I won't give out spoilers. In theory, you'll kind of hear me talk about some of it in the beginning of the chat itself, but, I think it's crazy, and again, something that, talking about on the show has been and made me think about something beyond the show, for a couple of days, and just kind of thinking about, getting older and loss and how, some things can still inspire you. I've been watching Kevin Smith movies and listening to his podcasts for 20 some odd years now. And it's crazy to think about how many attachments I have to different people because of Kevin Smith, how many people I've met through being fans of his, how it's inspired me to do so much. And it's interesting because Clerks 3 was met with a little bit of backlash, as was Clerks 2 when it came out. And it made me start thinking about how in almost every form of everything, we want progression. We want to move forward. We want new things. We want progress, for lack of a better term. But when it comes to art, when it comes to entertainment, I should say, we almost regress where we just want the thing that makes us comfortable. We want our comfort food. And I just find that so interesting. I find it weird that that's one of the few things where it's that's how it goes. And with Clerks, I've never really felt like that was really a cash grab. It was a lazy attempt at just rebooting IP. I really honestly feel like it captures where I've been or where I'm about to be, because usually I'm about 10 years younger than the protagonists in the movie. And to see so much of these things broadcast on a screen mirroring my life, it was really hard. It was really hard to watch this movie, and I know this to be true because it was said to me during therapy sessions and shit, talking about a lot of the people when I would talk about different relationships, different things happening in my life, how I grew up. And I remember my therapist going, well, how did that, resolve? How did that relationship, turn out? And it's like, oh, well, that person's dead. That person died. That person's gone. Stemming from my brother dying when I was 2, to my grandparents, to close friends, it's one of those that I guess doesn't ever take it away. I guess I've kind of just learned this thing inherently that we all die. But Clerks kind of put it into a perspective of relationships that I had kind of let go where, friends had passed and I hadn't talked to them in, a decade. kind of put a lot of that into perspective for me and really, really kind of bummed me out. I guess on a more personal level of just understanding that sometimes we shouldn't hold grudges. And, it's taken the passing of some of my friends to reconnect with other friends that I had let go by the wayside. But this movie kind of reminded me that I'd kind of fucked up and didn't make the same amends to somebody else. And now they're gone, and that part of my life is gone, and I won't be able to remedy any of that. So that's kind of where my headspace was going into this chat with Jake. And I think, honestly, was a really good place to be. I think it allowed me and Jake and I, as it should have been said, allowed us to kind of get on a really emotional level right away. Allowed there to be some vulnerability between the two of us to open up as two people. It's two strangers and find some common bonding ground. And I think, honestly, that's a lot of who Jake is. I think Jake is a really deep, introspective person, and that's what scared me for so long about wanting to talk to him, because I just didn't think I would be able to match the same vulnerability, the same honesty in myself and in what I would talk about. I think it honestly took, something like therapy, something like a Clerks movie to get me there to where we could have this kind of a conversation. So, without further ado, this is my conversation with Jake, and I'll talk to you all on the other side of it. Catching me, I don't know if you've caught it recently. Clerks 3, I just finished it about 20 minutes ago, and holy hell, I thought I knew how that movie was going to end, and then the third act came, and I have been crying for the last 20 minutes thinking about just the nostalgia the movie hits on, as well as, spoiler alerts, the loss of friends and friendship and so forth, and how our friends, even in death and in passing, they still live on through us and through our memories of them. And it's still wild that, you can still get your emotions can be tugged in different art forms and so forth, especially when you least expect it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the reason why we like storytelling. We like movies and TV shows, because it tells a story of something similar that, probably connects on a deeper level to us. So but it's I had not seen Clerks 3, but I saw the first Clerks when I was a teenager, and I thought it was the bee's knees. I thought it was just such a funny and unique story.
I think the thing that's interesting about when you grow with something, we can talk about it in music, we can talk about if it's films or a director or whatever. There's a lot of things art can do where it can grow with you. It can change as you change. And I think that's been one of the things, I'll at least say for, the Clerks franchise is, I'm about 10-ish years behind every iteration of the movie. So, I found it when I was, coming up in my teens, and it's dealing with people who are in their 20s, mid 20s or so. When Clerks 2 came out, I was approaching 30. They were in their, mid 40s or so. And it's just kind of weird because it's it has the nostalgia of being around my friends when you're, 16, 17, 18 and ready to take on the world, and everything, and you're just invincible, to then kind of realizing as you get older, you're mortal and things happen, and, life happens, and it's a reflection on who we were and who we thought we were going to become, and all these things. And it's kind of a trip to, be almost 40 at this point myself, and just kind of be like, man, life is interesting.
It's definitely interesting, for sure. The ups and downs. And I think what I'm realizing for myself, coming to terms of just better understanding as to how life operates, and for myself, how to navigate the waters. One of the things that I'm really holding on to and learning about is suffering well, and trying to deal with suffering, or trying to deal with, really, really difficult or heavy situations in a healthy way. because the way that I was kind of raised, I just it was really hard for me to be able to kind of sit with my feelings and accept them and kind of let things be what they were going to be, and to be able to respond rather than react. And so that's kind of something that I've been working on for a long time now in my own personal life, is just recognizing that I don't have control over my own life and the situations that surround me. And it's a humbling place to be because um, recognizing that I don't have control is very difficult for a person like myself. And then having to feel the feeling of being powerless in certain situations because of maybe decisions that are being made by other people, or something happened and there was no way I could change it. And to respond to that in a healthy way, it's like, it's just a game changer, man. But yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, is that something that you have come to through either like therapy or just something you've kind of realized about yourself just in retrospect, in kind of like being more introspective as a person and kind of thinking about things you've gone through? Which kind of is it?
Um, yeah, I think it's more of like a self-reflection, and I'm kind of a big, like, deep thinker, and I like to journal, and I like to just kind of look at the things that are happening around me in my
Hmm.
life, and maybe some of my habits and things. And I think that just kind of repeatedly self-reflecting and taking time to get to know myself, I guess is the way to put it, um, has been really beneficial for me, because I'm kind of a fast mover. I do a lot of things, and I'm always constantly moving, or trying to do something, or create something, or build something, whatever. And so that leaves very little time for me to take a moment and say, hey, like, you know, what are you really doing? And is it
Hmm.
making an impact? Is it healthy? Um, is it valuable? Is it going to help build your future? And so I mean, I do therapy. I've gone to therapy, and I like having someone that I can kind of just verbalize what I'm thinking about and bounce ideas off, or maybe be encouraged to go a different route, or learn maybe something about myself that I didn't really recognize because, I'm in my own head too much. I think therapy is really beneficial, and I think it's a great tool. But for me, a lot of times it's journaling. It's like writing these things down, and grasping the reality of my life and the decisions that I've made, or the habits that I have, and which ones are healthy and what isn't healthy, has been really helpful in me just understanding more of who I am. I get lost trying
Hmm.
to sometimes be somebody I'm not, and for some reason I think society does a pretty good job of telling us who we should be, and not who we are. And so we get so focused on, I got to do this, I got to be this, I've got to, this is success, or whatever, and we lose ourselves along the way, and then we feel pretty numb, and we lack our own true identity, and that we tend to feel lost. Or so that's been myself a few times in my life. So I think it's really important to self-reflect and really kind of get to know who I am better, through different.
I think the thing that's interesting, sort of about that, and it's funny because I've been talking about this a lot more throughout the podcast as of recently, where I feel like when I notice kind of themes happening, whether it be conversations I'm having on this or just something that came from having a conversation, and then I think about it, kind of take it out into, my day to day world, and interestingly seeing how it comes back to me. It was interesting the other day. I was having a conversation with Sam, the singer of the Bobby Lees, and we got to talking about, what sparked a lot of the lyrical content for their new record, which was kind of her having a mental breakdown and then kind of getting her way out of it. And it was interesting because at the time when we were talking, I go, as someone who really likes the English language and just kind of looking at how we interact with one another and how we, I don't want to say re-explain things that have happened to us, but with the terminology and the phrasing we'll use, a lot of times, she had made the comment, she goes, when I was at my breakdown or when I had my breakdown, and the connotations she was kind of giving it were negative and bad, but she was like, I'm on this other side and I'm so much better, and all the words and phrases were positive. And I go, I'm not discrediting what you went through, but I think instead of calling it a breakdown and having a negative look at it, I would call it a breakthrough, because it's the moment where you realized something needed to change and you changed that part of your life for the better and chose to be proactive and instead of kind of reactive. And I was like, but it's just interesting that we don't tend to give ourselves the credit I think we deserve until like we're far beyond something. And instead of kind of being like, no, I realized that like something wasn't okay and I changed something, instead of being down and speaking about it negatively, we should look at it and speak about it positively, because I think it is a positive thing that we've done.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that we tend to shame ourselves pretty heavily when we make a mistake or we're not where we think we should be. And when something feels uncomfortable, um, that's when we get scared. Because, it's like, that's what you're saying. That's where opportunity for growth is. And I fully agree with that. And I think that that's a great way to kind of maybe remind people of, there's a different perspective that you can have on the situation. Um, and generally speaking, that perspective dictates kind of the direction that you go. I mean, if you wake up every day and you're telling yourself you're a piece of shit, or you're not good, or you're not worthy, or you're not enough, um, that's going to drive your mental state and how you feel about yourself. And opportunities might come up and you're going to go, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm a piece of shit. I can't, I'm not good enough, or I'm not strong enough, or, um, if something catastrophic happens with maybe the loss of a family member or divorce or things like that, like, um, you can take that and bury yourself in that, and that can be the rest of your life. You where you hold things like that to who you are, and it kind of takes away from all the other joy or things that you could have in your life. And so I think that that's why I'm really big with the mental health aspect of things, because just from my personal experiences and how I was raised as a kid and where I am today, understanding that a lot of the things that maybe I was taught or I experienced wasn't necessarily healthy, and um, understanding that I don't have to be the person that I was, or the person that maybe I was surrounded by an environment or things that were unhealthy. I don't have to participate in that, and I can also change. You know,
Yeah.
and I want that for everybody. I really do, because I know that every person struggles with something, um, and I think that if people just were maybe take a little more time to love themselves and get to know themselves and think about the reasons why they do things. Why do you talk to people the way you talk to them? Why do you say the things you say? Why do you think the way you think? Like, is it because that's what you believe, or is it because it's what you're told, or is it because you were conditioned to talk this way or act this way or be this way? Like, why do you have these dreams? Are they really your dreams, or are they just high expectations and standards that someone's put on you? Like, and all this stuff is in your mind. It's all mental. It's all, you taking experiences and things around you and absorbing them, and them kind of molding you in a say. Um, and it's like I just want people to be successful in what they believe success is, and I want them to be in love with themselves. And I'm just a little tired of sometimes feeling like, society's telling us we have to be a certain way, or we have to talk or act, or just, and it's like, can we just be who we are, and accept each other, and try to encourage one another, and love each other, and love ourselves. Um, and I know that that's a big can of worms, but I think just for the conversation piece, just talking about our mental health as individual people, and how important it is, and for the future person that we desire to truly be.
I think the bigger thing, and like I've really been kind of honing in on this myself I'll honestly say probably the last few years, but it's a concept I've really been thinking about is, you know, we exist, we're constantly changing as people, who we were, 10 years ago isn't who we are now. And it may not be who we are 10 years, into the future. But it's one of those things that, I was saying, actually doing an intro outro for a podcast coming up, that I was like, it's really interesting with technology and everything. We want everything to move forward. We want everything to change. We want it to be the best that it can be. But it's weird that, and a lot of things that are supposed to inspire us, a lot of art, we don't want it changed. We want it the way it always was. We don't want anything to grow and adapt. And it's really weird to be this age now and think about that, how, we don't allow people to grow. We don't allow people to change, but it's like we allow, and it's such a weird way to say it, but it's like we allow brands to change. We allow, Chevy to keep making new vehicles and all this stuff. No one is clamoring for a 2023 vehicle with an 8-track player in it. But we still have people who are like, what the best thing a band ever did was 15 fucking years ago, the first record they ever did when they were like 15. That's the best thing they'll ever do. That's the best they'll ever be. And anything else is garbage. And it's like, why is that? Why do we put people in these boxes where they can never become anything other than when we first were interacting with them, and not grow? And I haven't really come to a conclusion or figured it out, but it is a very interesting way to kind of look at life, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I do not have the answer to that. But that's kind of, and I think too, like, for some reason I feel like we tend to get a little scared when we change. Like, we get a little uncomfortable when things are growing around us, and because we feel comfortable where we are, right? We have our comfortabilities, and I always tell people, um, or I always think to myself, like, uh, growth is, um, when you're uncomfortable. So I might as well get comfortable being uncomfortable. And what that means is, like, sometimes you don't have the same friends. You outgrow your friends, or you outgrow your job, or you really want something new for yourself, but you've been working the same job, and I don't know, if I leave that, then, like, is this right, or is this going to work? And we have all the doubts and fears and things like that. And it's like, think about this: the other side of that coin is like, well, you've been working this job, and I'm just giving an example. You've been working this job, right, for 10 years or whatever, and you really want to move into this new field, but you're scared, and you have a lot of fear and doubt. So you stay at this job because it's comfortable and it's what you know. But, like, and that's okay, right? Because some people do that, and that's their choice. But imagine if you're supposed to be in this new place, and that's what you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to grow, and you're supposed to leave this job and go and pursue this other, career or dream. And now you're missing out on that growth. You're missing out on more joy, or more purpose, or more excitement to why you're waking up in your days. All because you're scared and you fear what the unknown, right? And I think that has a lot to do with the way that we see things, and when we go, oh, like, no, you gotta stay here. This is what you're supposed to do, and this is what you're told to do or who you're supposed to be. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I enjoy um, creating things and kind of just trying to give things a shot at least. Um, and they're still scary. And uh, by all means, like I opened a gym during the pandemic, and
Hmm.
one of my key advisors would call me every day, and he'd say, "Hey, Jake, I love the mission and vision of like a mental health gym. I think that's really great, and I love you dearly, but this is a horrible time to do this. Absolute horrible time to do this." And I wasn't touring, so I wasn't really making much money, and everything was closed. And then he would call me another day, and he would say, "Hey, you know that gym down, in downtown, blah blah blah." So yeah, he's like, "It closed today. The gym closed today." Just to try to, protect me or to, share the reality of things. And I just went for it, and I was so scared, and I was freaking out. But thankfully, and I feel, blessed by it. Like it's up and running. I have a great team. I have great members at my gym, and it has grown me leaps and bounds to my understanding of business and community building and things like that. And so I don't know. I feel like if we don't try, we might miss out on a whole other beautiful chapter that's meant for us in our lives. And so, but I think, again, I think that that's connected to your mental health, you know, um, and how you see yourself and things. But yeah, I
I
digress.
think I think the thing that's interesting about that is it reminds me of as I've gotten older and working other jobs, I had this epiphany walking my dog one day, because I had gone on Facebook at the time and saw like someone I used to work with still complaining about the job. And I had left that job a good 5, 6 years ago. And I commented, I was like, shit, or get off the pot, dude. I was like, nothing has changed. You are still bitching about the same things that I bitched about, that other people bitched about, the people who were there before you and I were there were bitching about. It won't change. The only change that you can control is yourself and what you want. If you're not happy, leave. I promise you, as someone who literally left there and has only done better for myself, like I sat there and gave that place 6 years of my life, and
Mhm.
I go, and all I got was given excuse after excuse as to why they couldn't give me more money, couldn't do, promote me or anything like that. And I had the epiphany while walking my dog, and I go, why is it that if I were to personify the job and be like, it treats me bad, it does all this, okay, it's an abusive relationship. We tell people in abusive relationships, get out. It's not healthy. Get out for your own good. And just like the people in those abusive relationships, you find excuses as to why you can't. And it inevitably gets to some reason. But I was like, why is it that, we can tell everyone to get out of a personal relationship for the safety or well-being of themselves, but jobs I think are equally as bad at or worse because they are probably mentally and more importantly financially hurting you and keeping you there because of like, well, you're
Mhm.
never going to get anything better, and they're putting all that doubt in your head. And it's you were talking, used a word I enjoy using, but we have been conditioned to think that this is as good as it's going to get, or if we don't go somewhere else, what if it doesn't end up working the way it was supposed to or that we thought. And so they just keep you there, and it's a complacency, and it's frustrating to see people who aren't willing to change or make the decision to benefit themselves and do better. And I haven't figured out if it's because they don't believe they can do better, or if someone else is involved in that narrative of why they can't. But I see it all the time, and it's really disheartening to see it because I'm kind of proof that literally it's like I left and I'm so much happier. Not only am I making more money, but I'm just happier as a whole because I'm not dealing with the same bullshit that I was tired of day in and day out, where I would dread getting up and going to work. I don't love necessarily the job I have, but I hate it significantly less than that one. And at the end of the day, I count that as a win.
Yeah, sure. I think, I think, again, I think it's your mental state. I think it's what you've experienced, and all plays a part, and like obviously in what you've conditioned to believe about yourself or what you're supposed to be doing. Because I agree that it's frustrating to see that sometimes when you've got a friend that's just really just not having a good time, and it's like, man, like, can't you just do this? Can't you just do that? And in reality, yes, he could, but in his head, absolutely not, right? Because there's things going on in his mind. There's worries, there's doubts, there's expectations, there's all of these things that are going on in his mind. And maybe what's his girlfriend going to say, or his wife, or what about the bills, and what about this and that, and I don't have it in me, I can't, all those types of things. And that's why I'm saying I think it's really important for the world to just start to focus on mental health, because a lot of the answers that we give ourselves are dictated by how healthy we are in our mental state. And one of the good things for me as a person was joining August Burns Red, because I left everything I knew. I left my family, I left my job as a painter, and I left my state and drove to Pennsylvania and joined this band. And my whole life completely changed. But what I realized was that if I can do that with the band, I can do that with something else. And it gave me confidence, it gave me strength, it gave me understanding, it gave me belief and hope in myself. And then I opened up Heart Support, my nonprofit, and that was created. And then the pandemic came, and I was like, I'm going to open a gym, you know. So, and I opened a gym, and now we have Heart Support Festival, right, which I've been trying to work on for 5 years now. And so I feel like people need to bet on themselves and really start to just believe in themselves and try to break through their belief system and the ceiling that they have for themselves on what they're capable of. And I feel like if they can, if we can work towards that, and especially as a community, like it feels so good when you have people that actually want to help you get there, or want to encourage you to believe in yourself or break the ceiling, right? Um, like that support helps so much. And that's another reason why I started Heart Support, because I understand that everybody has things going on. And some people might go, I'm fine. I don't have anything, Okay, that's fine. Like if that's you, then you may not care about Heart Support, and that's completely good. And I'm happy that you don't have anything going on. But a lot of people do. And, I think that having good, strong community really is a great resource and tool for us to grow. And I honestly think that we're on this earth for two reasons. One reason is to give love, and the other reason is to receive it. And we can't do either of those things by ourselves. So, when I think about people, I think like, hey, like, because you think about it, like, I want to be famous, or I want to be, successful, or I want to be Batman, I want to be, a police officer and fight for justice and truth, or whatever it is, right? When you're a little kid, you think about all these things, and it's like you want to give something, you want to save something, you want to protect something, you want to love something, you want to fight for something, right? And then you want everybody to be thankful and appreciative, and oh man, thank you so much, and and we can't do that by ourselves, you know and I think that we all have that desire, and so it's hard for us as people to have a desire to love people and to receive love, and just wake up and kind of go to a desk job and doing something that doesn't really make sense for us. It doesn't tug on our heart, it doesn't fill our desires, it doesn't bring us a sense of purpose, right? And like that's
Right.
tough, and like that's not good, right? And you're lacking in your health, and over years that'll do something to you. So again, like I just think that talking about mental health and trying to engage ourselves as who we are, and then having a community that is willing to talk about these things and you not feel weird or awkward, is just important to me personally. That's something I think that is important, and I invest a lot of my life and time into that, because I feel like that in itself gives me purpose.
Kind of one of the last things I wanted to touch on this part of it, and then kind of talking a little bit more about the festival itself. You had said probably like 10, 15 minutes ago, you had talked about how at times there's fear of growth because of, and I'm kind of blanking on the specifics of what you said, but basically you kind of talked about not growing and being afraid to grow. And so I almost was going to cut you off there to ask this question, but it's an interesting thing I've never really thought of. But do you feel, given the circumstance of you touring and being gone and away from your loved ones and all the people and all the things you quote unquote are missing out on, do you feel that has made you grow more, or do you think it's maybe stagnated you a little bit in the sense that because you're doing something that is not shared with everyone that you love, it creates a bit of, I don't want to call it tension, but maybe it causes a bit of separation where maybe the growth that you see in yourself isn't the growth that everyone else sees because they look at it as a negative that's happening. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? I don't know if I'm asking that question correctly. I'm kind of working my way through it as I was thinking about it.
yeah. We can uh, dig on this one together. So y- yeah, it's tough because I try not to let people's opinions, like the majority of people, I don't listen.
Mm.
Um, I listen to the people that are very close to me because they know me best, and um, and thankfully I don't surround myself with a bunch of yes men. So
Mm.
so I also believe that something that I again tell myself is the most teachable man is a humble one, and I think that when I'm out here trying to do things and grow, I need to listen. I need to find mentors. I need to um, find resources and tools for me to gain knowledge and wisdom and understanding, so that I make the correct decisions. I'm also a faith person, so I pray, and even journal my questions and thoughts. And so, for growing and for growth for me personally, um, I cannot. I can't live a performance based life anymore. I did that for a very, very long time, and that's performing for others to meet
Mm.
their expectations and standards. I don't think that that's really healthy, so I try not to do that. Um, I really try to have my core beliefs and my core um, faith, and let who I believe I am to dictate where I'm going to go, even
Mm.
if it's not the popular route. So to answer the question of, if somebody else sees my growth as negative, I mean, I'll be honest with you, in this day and age, I'm sure there is somebody who sees my growth as negative.
Mm.
Um, but I don't care about performing for that person or those people. I can't do that. There's too much in me that um, loves myself too much to be like, oh well, now I'm just going to mold myself to this person and be that. Because then again, now I'm not living in my identity as Jake Lures. I'm living my identity as whatever, Jake Lures from August Burns Red, or you know, the CEO of Heart Support or whatever. And things just get real, and then you got to speak a certain way, you gotta act a certain way, you gotta dress a certain way. That's just all. I'm not doing it. Um, but yeah, I think several years of touring um, has definitely, you know, put a strain on my loved ones, and distance, and lack of communication or connection. Um, and that's something that I have to personally. That's something that I have to navigate through, um, and it's part of, I guess, part of sacrifice. there's always going to be sacrifice to some degree somewhere. And what I try to do is I try to prioritize and figure out a way to invest in where areas I'm lacking. So relationships to me are like a bank account. And every time I distance myself from that relationship, I'm withdrawing from that bank account. So how can I deposit? How can I make deposits? Is it a little phone call? Is it a Zoom call? Is it I'm super slammed with all this shit, but I'm going to drive 8 hours to visit, for a couple days? What is it, right? And for certain people, there's certain things that they have to sacrifice. Um, and being a touring musician is not for everyone. I will say that. And every single band member, every crew member that we have makes that sacrifice. And so it's not taken lightly. And we try to do our best to, let our guys have the time that they need, or they need to bring people out or whatever. We understand it. But yeah, I mean, I would say that if we were to sit down anybody and talk about what they're doing, there's probably something they're doing in their life that we may not agree with or condone. Doesn't mean we can't love them. Doesn't mean we can't support them. Doesn't mean we can't encourage them. This world needs to understand that. But, there might be something that they struggle with or that they're having an issue. And yeah, to other people, it's not growth, or to other people, it is hurtful and damaging. And that's why I think it's really important to have a community of people that are understanding, you know? 'Cause it's so quick this world is so good at telling you how bad you are or what you suck at.
Today's Beer Minute is brought to you by Starving Artist Brewery, who share a simple belief: you should judge beer and not people. Today's beer is from Martin House Brewing out of San Antonio, Texas, and it's their sweet and sour strawberry beer. Coming in at 7%, this sour drinks more like some of my favorite sour gummy candies, tart and sweet, and dare I say refreshing as well? The lactose in this really balances out the sweet tartness of this beer, proving once again why Martin House are one of the go-tos for sours. Thanks to Starving Artist Brewery, who remind you to support your starving artists, and please, always drink responsibly. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, I think for me, it's thinking about how, traveling the world, like as I haven't really traveled internationally at this point yet, but getting to see the world, at least the US around me, has informed me more of a lot of the people geographically that are different, have different lives and lead different lives and are just different people than me here in Michigan, but also that we're the same in a lot of ways. And there's things like that where when you kind of start thinking about people, it's like sometimes you growing as a person, and what I meant by kind of like as a detriment, seen as a detriment to someone else, it's like, I could see like when I do this podcast at times, like, it's time away from my wife. So while I'm growing something, and it's also, I'm learning a lot about myself and I'm learning a lot about other people, and I'm able to take these things and these conversations and apply them to other people and kind of try to grow my relationships with other people. I realize it's sort of coming at the detriment at times of other relationships that maybe are falling by the wayside because of the time I'm investing in this. So it's one of those where it is kind of the give and take, the ebb and flow of life, I guess, and thinking about, I guess, sacrifices and what's worth it in the end, and hopefully, not making too much of a sacrifice in any one direction to cause a, something that you can't get back at some point.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I was saying, journaling, what are your good habits? What are your unhealthy habits? What are you investing your time in? Why are you making the decisions you're making? Right. Because you're looking at the fact that everything costs. Everything costs. Your unhealthy habits, they're going to cost you. Your healthy habits cost you time, energy, focus, right? Your work or your dreams cost you study and devotion and passion and hard work. Same with relationships. Relationships cost. So, yeah, I think that, and that's just in my opinion, that's a truth in my life, that I think that everything costs us something. And, but we also have to have grace for ourselves and recognize that, like, you're just a human. Like, you're a human, dude. Like, you are not, some superhero. You're a human being, and we're all messy, and that's okay, right? I just, I love, I love meeting myself there, where I
Mm.
understand that I'm just a messy fucking dude. I'm just a messy dude. And if I can meet myself there and I can be okay with that, then I can look at all of the things that I am doing and I can be encouraged
Mm.
that I'm willing to move on that. I'm willing to grow from there. I'm willing to accept this for what it is, but not accept it for where I'm going, right? And
So that was my conversation with Jake, and I really want to thank him for taking the time, especially standing outside of a venue in another country to do press. But I really enjoyed this conversation. It's, again, I would implore anybody, if you're listening to this show, if you enjoy this show, well, first of all, thank you for listening. But more so, let it inspire you, hopefully, to maybe do this same thing. I've been really, really steeped in thinking about the show and what it means and where it's gone and how far it's come as we're approaching the 6-year anniversary of the show and 400 episodes. And it's definitely one of those things where I mean, it's so serendipitous that the Clerks thing is how, part of this started being a discussion for this episode, considering Kevin Smith was so heavily tied to me going, I could do a podcast. And I think that same drive, that same wanting to do something, I guess, to help your voice or other people's voices, however you want to put it, I think is also what drives Jake to want to do Heart Support Festival. I mean, the fact that you had heard him say, like, this is something that had been probably 3-4 years in the making of just, I have this idea, how do I do it? And, it's funny because when I used to book shows, and I started this podcast, one of the people I wanted to have on was a friend who used to book shows, but also would put on a local festival here that gained pretty big prominence in the national touring scene, to the point where at one point they had almost gotten all of the rest of the members of Pantera at the time to play the festival. And obviously that would have been huge news if all the members of Pantera were in the same place at the same time, because I don't think that had happened ever since the band broke up. So it was one of those things, I've always had this fascination with, how do you put on a festival? What does it look like? Because I know just putting on a show, I know what that's like. I know what putting on several shows to kind of, I don't want to say build a calendar, but I'm being offered this show, okay, and then I'm also being offered this show for a couple of days later or a week later. I know what it is to be on a steady grind of putting shows together. I know from working with venue people what it's like for them to actually fill the calendar and all of the ins and outs of what you have to do to put on a successful show. Now amplify that by being in a band yourself, trying to do a big festival that's going to draw and not lose its ass. That's a lot of work. And I mean, you heard me say at the very end, are you already working on next year's? Because now you would be needing to work on the next year's festival. You would have to start trying to secure lineups. You would have to start securing dates for the venue. You'd have to start, getting deposits down probably for, securities and for, different porta potties and vendors and sponsors and all of those kind of things, getting a budget ready. And it's one of those that it's I don't think people understand. It is a fucking grind to do a festival and put it on, and to do it successfully year in and year out. It requires a team, like Jake said. And to me, it's a fascinating world that I don't think a lot of people understand, just how many moving parts there are to putting on a show, let alone a festival. And to have it run successfully, for everyone that was shitting on the When We Were Young festival, by all accounts, other than the first day, which, I agree with everybody who was you can't say that this venue did the wrong thing by shutting down. I forget what country band it was. Might have been Sugarland or something. I don't know. They played a county fair. The winds were really bad, and the whole fucking stage collapsed and injured people. And it's dude, you can't risk that anymore. I mean, not that you could ever before, but literally you cannot risk that. I don't know if that festival or whatever it was that they were playing. I don't know if it has happened since because of probably the lawsuits and liabilities and the insurance and all that kind of stuff that they would have to pay as a result of going against weather recommendations and so forth. So, but the point is so often we want things to fail so we can laugh at it. And to me, it's like, the When We Were Young festival is a great one. The first day, they chose to shut it down, and everyone was like, oh, see, we knew it was bullshit. And it's like, literally every band is there. Like, the proof is in the pudding. It is fucking happening. The fact that they already announced next year's with bigger bands and all this other stuff, it's like, it's happening, and they made it work. But it also is a lot of work, and everything that I've heard from all the bands that went, from all the people that went, like, there were some hiccups, and I'm sure maybe they'll fix the next year, as you don't know what's going to happen. But the fact that, like, every band was like, it was ran so smoothly for a first-year festival, and then from the people that played from the week before to this past weekend, like, we're like, it was so much smoother than even last week. I love to see it, and I don't think people understand what an undertaking it is to do it. So the fact that Jake is not only involved in his band, is now doing heart support, as a nonprofit, owns a gym. I mean, the dude just literally takes on all these things that he wants to accomplish in life and is successful in them. Because it's the mentality you need to be successful, and it is a mindset. All of that said, I will stop talking about the festival and all those kind of things. If you would like to keep up with August Burns Red, you can find them at Facebook, Instagram at August Burns Red, Twitter at ABR Band. If you would like to keep up with Heart Support, you can go to heartsupport.com. Everything the festival is at heartsupportfest.com. We're 108 days away as I'm recording this right now. The full lineup, tickets are available, all of that kind of stuff. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, you can find us simple enough, Brew Speak Pod on all your social media platforms. If you would like to support us monetarily, you can do such over at patreon.com/BrewSpeakPod. Want to give our patrons a shout out real quick. Sarah, Craig, and Chase, thank you for supporting the podcast. Hopefully you're enjoying all of the material content that is all over there. Bonus episodes, all of the episodes well before they go onto the main feed. Episodes you'll never see on the main feed. Probably 8 or 9 of those, I believe. And just doing a lot over there. So thanks for all the support. If you want to email me, you can do such at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. Keep a conversation going from an episode that you maybe enjoyed and a topic that we discussed that you want to continue talking about. If you want to recommend guests, if you want to anything, I can be reached there. So for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will talk to you all next time with Alex from Despised Icon. That was a pretty interesting conversation that kind of ran the gamut of a lot of different things, steeped heavily in nostalgia, as it were. So for the Brewtally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will talk to you all next time.